Thank you so much for listening to this video and joining us today. The video is titled Addressing Your Concerns About Vaccines. Today I want to welcome Kathy Costello to speak about vaccine education. Kathy's a nurse practitioner and is also the VP of programs here at Can Do MS. Welcome, Kathy.
Thanks very much, Krista.
So to start things off, maybe you can just give us a little general background on vaccines.
Sure. So vaccines are biologic products, and they're administered sometimes by mouth, sometimes intranasally, and sometimes by injection. And the whole idea is to provoke the immune system to respond. And then the immune system can build an immune response that's protective and hopefully provides long-term immunity. Vaccines work by different mechanisms and in order to stimulate the body's immune system. And there's two main categories of vaccines: inactivated and live attenuated vaccines. I'm going to give a little explanation about them because it's a little confusing. So inactivated vaccines are non-infectious, meaning the vaccine is not able to cause the infectious illness. And there are several types of inactivated vaccines, meaning they work by different mechanisms, but none of them can cause the infection that they're intended to prevent. And all of them will provoke the immune system to build a response to the infectious agent. So that other main category then is live attenuated vaccines. And these are made from the disease-causing virus or bacteria. But the virus or bacteria are substantially weakened so that under normal circumstances, these vaccines do not cause the infection that they're meant to prevent. However, they do carry the potential to cause the actual infectious disease, particularly in the case of someone who is significantly immunosuppressed. So vaccines help to prevent contagious illnesses, but to be valuable, their benefits have to far outweigh the risks. And I think that's something that we all worry about, particularly with the COVID-19 vaccines that we're going to get to in a little bit, because they were made in a very short period of time. But let's think back for a moment to the polio vaccine. In the 20th century, polio was really a feared predator. And every summer, parents worried about their own children because thousands of kids became infected every year. And many of them wound up being paralyzed, and also some actually died. So this was a very frightening time. And in fact, President Franklin Roosevelt was himself a victim of polio. And between his efforts and the efforts of the March of Dimes, two vaccines were ultimately developed. And the first one began to be given in an immunization program in the mid-1950s. But as it turned out, one of the companies that was manufacturing this vaccine had poor safety standards. And people who received the vaccine, many of them actually developed polio, and some even died. Well, this was horrific. I mean, this was a terrible tragedy. And people were, as you can imagine, ridiculously worried and concerned if they should push forward and have their kids vaccinated. Well, the federal government stepped in and developed very strict regulatory rules and guidance that manufacturers had to follow. And these rules are still followed today. As it turns out, because of the federal government stepping in with these safety standards, the vaccine industry, if you will, or vaccines in general, are the safest medical product in the United States. And with that vaccine program that became worldwide, according to the WHO, polio has been almost eradicated, 99% gone. So we have to think that an effective and safe vaccine program is what we're looking at here for COVID-19.
That's great information. So are people with MS immunosuppressed?
That's a great question. And no, as it turns out, people with MS are not immunosuppressed. The immune system in people with MS is not weak. It's different than the non-MS population in that the regulatory mechanisms that usually prevent autoimmune activity aren't working in someone with MS. And so the central nervous system becomes the target of the immune system. This results in inflammation and damage to cells and tissues within the brain and the spinal cord and lead to the symptoms that we see associated with MS. People with MS are no more susceptible to infection than the general population. And research has shown that people with MS respond to viral and bacterial infections similarly than to people who do not have MS. So any immune compromise in someone with MS is not due to the disease itself, but it could be due to a treatment that someone is receiving either for their MS or for something else, or to the sequelae of advanced disease, things like severe bladder or lung or skin conditions that can cause repeated infections that would make this person more likely to be susceptible, for instance.
Very interesting. So does that mean vaccines are safe for people with MS then?
So a lot of study has been done on this very question. Back in 2012, the US Institute of Medicine actually took a look at a large number of vaccines that were commonly given to kids and adults in the United States. And when they looked back at records, they were unable to see any causal relationship between giving a vaccine and the development of MS symptoms. Kaiser Permanente also did a record review in their very large system and really came to the same conclusion. And subsequent to that, a study reported in the New England Journal of Medicine found no increase in the risk of an MS relapse associated with 3 commonly used vaccines: tetanus, hepatitis B, and the flu vaccine. These are all inactivated vaccines, but they all worked by different mechanisms, but none of them provoked an MS relapse. So, based on the scientific research, the consensus amongst MS experts and immunologists is that inactivated vaccines are in fact safe for people with MS.
So when are vaccines unsafe for people with MS then?
Yes, there are a few instances when a vaccine may not be considered as safe. So the live attenuated vaccines, so remember, those are the ones made from the weakened virus or bacteria, could conceivably trigger an MS relapse. This risk, though, is considered very low. In a person who is immunocompromised due to certain disease-modifying therapies, there is a low risk that someone could develop the infection that the live attenuated vaccine is intended to prevent. And in patients who are prescribed certain disease-modifying therapies, the timing of the immunization is important to consider. Some of the disease-modifying therapies can deplete some of our immune system cells, and that's important to their mechanism. That's how they help us with our MS. But in depleting those cells, if you give someone an inactivated vaccine, for instance, they may not have enough cells to provoke that robust response, so that the immunity that someone would have may not be as big or as effective as someone who's not on one of those therapies. That doesn't mean don't get the vaccine. It means it's very important to discuss the vaccine and the timing of the vaccine with your healthcare provider. So the person who you see for your MS and you need to have a conversation to determine the best timing for you to have a vaccine. So 1, you're safe. It's not something that it's going to cause any illness. And 2, you're able to develop a robust immune response.
Now, what about these new COVID-19 vaccines? How do they work?
Yeah, so the Pfizer-BioNTech and the Moderna vaccines, which are the 2 that have been given emergency use authorization by the FDA, are mRNA vaccines. And this is a novel vaccine mechanism. These vaccines have been researched, or this mechanism has been researched for more than a decade. But up until now, there's not been any approvals. So they've been looked at for the treatment of things like Zika, the flu, rabies, and a few other viruses. So how do they work? So mRNA, or messenger RNA, is actually genetic material, and it contains instructions for making proteins. And as it turns out, in our bodies, that's an important job because all the functions of our body are driven by different proteins. And our DNA holds the information. Our RNA, and particularly messenger RNA, gives the instructions to cells so that they can do what they're supposed to do, which is make proteins. So in the case of an mRNA vaccine, the mRNA vaccine is given in a muscle, and it enters human cells and instructs them to produce a piece of the spike protein found on the surface of the SARS-CoV-2 virus. This is the virus, of course, that causes COVID-19. The body then is able to recognize that protein as foreign. It's an invader, and therefore will produce antibodies against it. Then, when the person maybe later is exposed to that virus, the body is now ready. It can recognize the virus and destroy it before it causes the illness. It's a very efficient mechanism. And once the genetic sequence of the COVID-19 virus was identified, scientists and researchers could get to work in making this vaccine.
Oh, that's pretty cool to hear. So are these mRNA vaccines for COVID-19 safe for people with MS then?
Yes.
Okay.
Based on the mechanism of action of the mRNA vaccines, they are considered to be safe for people with MS. Now, we don't have direct evidence of that. We don't know how many people with MS were in the clinical trials for these vaccines. But again, based on mechanism of action, leading immunologists and MS experts have taken a look at this and believe that they are safe for people with MS. The National MS Society has developed vaccine guidance endorsed by the MS Coalition and adapted by the MS International Federation. And this guidance states that people with MS should receive the COVID-19 vaccine. And according to the vaccine guidance, everyone who's considering a vaccine of any type, whether it's the COVID vaccine or any other type of vaccine, should have a conversation and make a decision in collaboration with your MS provider. And that's particularly true if there are treatments that can affect the timing of the vaccine.
So will the COVID-19 vaccine protect against some of these mutations that we're hearing about, the COVID virus mutations or variants that are emerging throughout the world?
That's a great question. And so far, scientists believe that the mRNA vaccines will protect against the current viral variants. However, continued testing is really needed as viral mutations will continue to emerge. It's what viruses do. Their job is to survive. And in order to survive, as we try and fight them, their job then is to change and to mutate, and new variants will continue to evolve and become apparent throughout the population. So we have to be vigilant. Researchers have to continue to work and look at these variants and ensure that the vaccines we have are effective. And if it looks as though they will not continue to be effective, then back to the laboratory to create vaccines that are. But so far, scientists do believe that the current vaccines will be effective against the variants that we have seen at this point.
Okay. And then the question everyone wants to know, when will we be able to stop wearing masks and keep social distancing?
Yeah, it's a great question. This is really, this has been such a difficult time, and every day it just gets more and more difficult. But the CDC, as well as the NIH, have both recommended that continued vigilance with mask wearing and social distancing really is needed, probably at least through the end of 2021. So in order for everyone to develop immunity, we need at least 70% of the population to be immunized. And we all know that the rollout has been challenging so far. It's hopeful that it'll start to pick up steam and more people will be immunized more rapidly. But we have to understand that until we have that herd or group immunity, that there's still going to be an awful lot of people at risk. So mask wearing, frequent hand washing, social distancing, avoiding social gatherings, all the stuff that we are so tired of hearing, but it's absolutely necessary to prevent further spread of the virus. We will overcome this, but we will need to follow infection prevention strategies and get the COVID vaccine when it's available and when it's possible for each individual based upon their own individual circumstances.
Thank you for all that crucial information, Kathy. I think that it's going to help our viewers. I know I learned a lot right